This is the Mend It Paths podcast with Chadwick Hayward, episode 18.
Welcome to menditpaths.com. Let's get back to bed.
Hi, Path Menders. Thanks so much for joining me for the 18th episode of the Mend It Paths podcast. This week, I am honored to be joined by Dr. Laurie Marbas. Dr. Marbas is board certified in family medicine and is a member of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. She is the medical director for the newly opened Dr. Fuhrman's Health Oasis in beautiful Boca Raton, Florida. She also hosts the Dr. Laurie Marbas podcast, and in collaboration with Chef Martin Oswald, runs the website docandchef.com. Dr. Marbas has used nutrition as medicine for many years. Prior to joining forces with Dr. Fuhrman, she created a lifestyle medicine practice in western Colorado and piloted a Nutritarian study at a rural hospital. She is also a veteran of the United States Air Force, a public speaker, educator, and corporate wellness expert. She also wrote 2 series of books while still in medical school, the Visual Mnemonics series and Blueprints Clinical Procedures. Hi, Dr. Marbas. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, it's great to finally have you on the show.
Wow, I'm really excited to hear our conversation today.
Yeah, it could go anywhere. Who knows? So I don't really know much about your background. Obviously, you're a family doctor. Did you always practice lifestyle medicine?
No, actually, I started that path about 5 years ago.
Okay, and what led you down there?
Well, it's really interesting. So I got out of the military and we basically landed in Colorado in a little town called Rifle, Colorado. And, you know, it's about, if you can imagine, so Rifle is the name of a gun, right?
Yeah.
So that's about the type of the population that I had. I had, you know, truckers and oil field workers and hunters and, you know, there's no gatherers. There were many meat eaters. So, and I grew up eating meat and dairy, but about 5 years ago, a really incredible thing happened to me. I had a patient who was 37, overweight. She had multiple issues, different medications, but she happened to come to me that day and said, you know, Dr. Marbas, meat and dairy really upset my stomach. And I said, well, stop eating meat and dairy. Seems like a logical conclusion. Yeah. And in my head, I understood that she would be fine, but it really didn't click with me that left her a plant-based diet. That just didn't dawn on me until she came back about 30 days later. And her daughter, who was 16 at the time, actually went on the diet with her mom because we lived in this little town where, you know, you had 2 grocery stores and no restaurants that would be anywhere remotely close to eating a healthy plant-based diet.
Okay.
They bought their groceries and brought them home. So they were eating healthy at home. And what was amazing was during that 30 days, her daughter pulled herself off 2 attention deficit disorder medications.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And so she brought her daughter with her to the appointment. And she's like, Dr. Marbas, why was she able to do this? What is going on with our food? I said, I really have no idea. I was literally dumbfounded and I didn't have an answer, but being a physician and, you know, there's a scientist inside of you. And so I started digging. And so this was back in early 2012. And I was astounded at the information I was finding that had been there this entire time, but I had to go look for it. It wasn't brought to me in my education as a physician in medical school. I had an excellent education. I was fully prepared to write those prescriptions and send people for their mammograms and their colonoscopies and, you know, take care of an acute illness or an acute injury. And I was fully capable of doing that. But when it came to the chronic disease, other than medication management or some type of intervention with traditional medicine, nobody had taught me about the value of nutrition. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. And everywhere I looked, you know, I was like, surely there's some CME or something out there, you know, that I could learn. Nothing. There was you know, it's like crickets in a room when you ask, hey, does anyone have any educational things I can learn, you know, as a doctor, how to present this to my patients, some really sound advice, how to incorporate it into their lives? Nothing.
So within your colleague group, is that what you mean? Or
no, I mean on the internet,
okay.
Anything out there that I was searching, the American Academy of Family Practice, the AMA, nothing was out there that would allow me to educate myself so I could be confident in my knowledge to teach this to patients.
Okay.
And so I was literally, I felt like I was, the lone voice in the wilderness going, hello. And so as I was learning about this, about 2 weeks later, I had a second patient come in who had lupus. Again, she was very young, 40 years old, diagnosed about 2 to 3 years earlier. She was about 50 pounds overweight. She was on 12 different medications, including methotrexate and high doses of prednisone. Methotrexate is a chemo drug. And what was interesting was she was telling me about her headaches that day. The migraines were so severe. She wasn't sure she could continue working. And it was devastating to think that this young woman here is at 40 years old, at the prime of her life, I consider, especially now that I'm over 40 years, like that's prime.
It's all perspective.
And totally. It's 40 is the new 20. And at least I feel that way. And, she really had many years left to live if she had been healthy and not having to fight this horrible disease, because it can be terminal. It's a nasty disease.
Yeah.
And we don't fully understand it other than let's suppress the immune system and, keep it at bay for a little while. But then you're at higher risk.
A host of other issues become prevalent then, right? Yeah.
Exactly, like cancer and infections and all these other things. And so if the medicines don't kill you, the disease might. Yeah. And so, she's done talking to me and telling me that day, like all these situation that's going on with her. I'm sitting going, yeah, I think I need to test this diet on this patient. And I said, I hope she'll be willing to be my guinea pig. And I actually honestly said, would you mind being my guinea pig? And she was like, you know what? I'll try anything because obviously nothing else is working. And I said, I don't think changing medications is going to help. If anything, adding another medication is going to make you feel worse. And so we measured her inflammatory markers called CRP that day, and they were 3 times high normal. And she started the diet that day. She came back in 2 weeks because I told her, I said, I can't wait 30 days. This is too mind blowing for me.
Yeah.
And I mean, I honestly had no handouts for her. I had no more information other than I said, I want you to cut out your animal products. And I think I did mention to her gluten because she had autoimmune issues, but even still that's minimal. It's just like breads and stuff. And, what happened was she came back in 2 weeks and, 8 pounds lighter. Her CRP had dropped to just outside normal, and within 5 months, 50 pounds lighter off of 7 of 12 meds, including the methotrexate, including the prednisone. She had a period within a few years of complete remission of her lupus with no antibodies. Her kidneys had been affected by lupus, had healed themselves.
Wow.
And I sit there, at that 2 week point, and I'm going, this is it. I'm done. And I'm a true believer as a physician, you have to walk the talk, because as a patient, you don't want to go to a doctor who's not living what they're telling you to do. Yeah. So if I tell you don't smoke, I don't smoke. If I tell you don't drink, don't drink. If I tell you don't drink coffee, I don't drink coffee. But, coffee's okay for some people out there.
I have a coffee sitting next to me right here. So
exactly. I just don't happen to like the taste of it. But what was really cool was I went home that day, God bless my family, to my husband and my 3 kids who were 18, 16, and 13 at that time. And I literally took a garbage bag and dumped it all in the garbage, the eggs, the cheese, the milk, the meat, everything I had in my refrigerator into the trash can. I had a freezer in my garage that had a quart of a grass-fed beef in it that I was trying to figure out in my head what to do, because I couldn't, in my mind, give this to someone because I'm going to be telling people how to get better is not to eat this stuff. So I was like, well, maybe I'll donate it to an animal shelter or something. Yeah. But what happened was in 48 hours, that freezer actually broke and that meat had to be disposed of. And I don't know if you've ever smelled such a large amount of
it's a rotting carcass,
meat.
Right?
Oh my goodness. And I never had a problem walking away from meat that day. Now cheese took me, I was 90 days before I quit craving that darn stuff. And, but my husband went on to lose 65 pounds. My allergies went away completely. My thyroid dosage, I've been hypothyroid for 20 years, has dropped consistently every year.
Oh, wow.
And, so that's how I did it. And then I developed over a few months to about a year, my own handout, 30 pages that I developed with patients. And if they came in for a UTI, they were leaving with a handout on a plant-based diet because, I captured every question a patient had and I'd write it down and I'd find the answer. And if that didn't work out, I'd find another answer until I had it refined to a point that, and after reading books and reading, Dr. Fuhrman stuff and Dr. Esselstyn and Dr. Campbell and Dr. McDougall and Dr. Bernard, Dr. Greger, all these amazing people educated me on the science of the diet, but there wasn't much practical advice. And so that's where my patients came in, because I was learning from them every day.
Yeah.
And that's how it came across. That's how it all happened.
And so it evolved organically for you from there.
Yes. And then I became like a vigilante. I was like all over the place. And so, I would shout at the rooftops about how this is the way to do it, and had a lot of conversions. A lot of people switched to the diet. You have a finite population of 10,000 or so in Rifle. And so then I moved on to Grand Junction, which is a bigger city, and we started a lifestyle medicine clinic there. And, we ran people there. Some amazing stories came out of that. I started working at a work comp place, and I converted the owners of the work comp place. And then we were going to go into the work, like employers, and help them develop programs. But then I got this opportunity last year to come here, and, it's been amazing. I found a place that I practice Krav Maga and do some fitness, and I converted those owners. I mean,
practice
you name
what?
it.
Sorry?
Krav Maga. It's a Israeli self-defense.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And it's I also do what they call combat fitness with a lady named Lee Garzinski, and she's amazing. But yeah, so they switched their diet now, and so I'm telling you, if you know me, you're going to learn. I have no fears. I'm not one of those people that don't share it. I'm like, I don't care. I feel it's a matter of life and death.
Yeah.
This is the message that I was meant to share, and here I go.
And so you did a research project on a Nutritarian lifestyle intervention while in Colorado. Is that right? Yeah,
actually, we did two different things. A friend of mine, Martin Oswald, who is amazing chef in Aspen, Colorado. He has a restaurant there called the Pyramid Bistro. And Martin and I met at a dinner hosted by a Dr. Greg Feinsinger in Glenwood Springs, who it took us 2 years to figure out that we were sharing the same message, and we were only 25 miles apart.
Oh, wow.
And anyway, once he found out who I was and I found out who he was, we totally, it's like finding a long lost brother. You're like, oh. And so what we ended up, he had Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, and his wife Ann coming to speak, and he had a dinner beforehand. And so I got to meet Dr. Esselstyn and Ann, and we had dinner with them, and I ended up going to the Cleveland Clinic with Dr. Esselstyn. It was just some cool stuff. And then that's where I met Martin and Dr. Feinsinger. And what we did, Martin came to my hospital where I worked in it's Grand River Hospital in Rifle, Colorado, and worked with our chefs. And we did a 30-day challenge where we took we started with 29 employees, but 2 or 3 of them fell out because they had obligations that couldn't do it. But 26 completed, and we had some pretty cool results. We created the chefs at the hospital, fed them, we made them meals. Lunch and dinner. They ate their breakfast. I gave them green light foods and red light foods. And so, what to eat and don't eat. And then we provided lunch and dinner for the weekend. They'd pick it up on Friday. We did that for 30 days. And, we had people losing close to 20 pounds in a month, cholesterol dropping 70, 80 points, triglycerides over 100. We had 5 pre-diabetics who were no longer pre-diabetic.
Wow.
And, fasting insulin levels dropping, joint pains just going away, stomach issues going away. And so that was a really powerful experience for those people who worked there to see I wasn't just talking craziness. But what was really interesting is that I had to talk to the hospital lawyers before I could actually do this. I had to
What?
I had to convince them. No, I'm dead serious. That they're like, well, Dr. Marbas, what if there's, somebody gets sick after eating this? I was like, do you understand? I'm only feeding them vegetables. I said, if they get sick off eating vegetables, then they have bigger issues. And nobody ever realized, are you freaking kidding me? I'm feeding people vegetables and you're telling me they might have some ill effect? Yeah, they might stop using some medications. Oh, anyway. Yeah, so, those hurdles, it just really gets me going. I'm just like I'm like a bull that just backs up and goes, okay, get ready for the charge then. So, it's just, I find it fun, and I really feel God has led me down this path. And so I just have no fear because I know He's already blazed the path for me, and I'm just walking the way He's telling me to go.
So was there anyone in that group that had no success? Because I'm reminded, I've recently been in contact with a nutritionist who talks about balance. And what that means is I see it as being code word for moderation. Moderation. Right. Mm-hmm. And like they say, I hear people say things along the lines of, you got to find what's right for you.
Lord,
as if to say that, like, I would be okay as a carnivore, whereas you would be okay as a plant eater. And that's the best diet for, we would have a different optimal diet. Was there anyone that didn't have success by switching to a nutritarian diet?
Okay, so someone will do what I tell them to do. If they eat the way I say, 100% of people will get better. There's no doubt, because on a physiological level, I don't care what your mental part of your head, your brain's telling you, I need to be a carnivore, I need to eat meat. That's BS. Because then you get down to the cellular level, we all need the same things. Now, unless you have some innate rare disease that doesn't allow you to, you're missing an enzyme that doesn't break something down or something like that, but the 99.9999% of the population was meant to thrive on a plant-based diet. Okay. And if anyone says moderation to me, I laugh at them. I say moderation kills.
Yeah.
Look at an American society. I'm sorry that you don't like the truth, but there's still absolute truth. Just because in your reality you want to change it doesn't change the fact. The fact is a plant-based diet was made for everybody. And it gets my goat when they're just coming up with excuses to come and change. But this is the way it is. I'm sorry, but on a cellular level, we're all the same.
Yeah.
Inside, it don't care if you're green, purple, red, or black, or upside down, and you're going to be the same. You're going to digest the same. Cells need glucose. Your cells are still going to be have lipotoxicity and have insulin resistance. And I mean, it cracks me up when people say that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel the same way. It's like, how do you respond to that? Right. And that's the trouble where you're speaking with someone who has credentials behind their name. Well, I'm a dietitian. Well, I'm a nutritionist. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean anything nowadays, right? There are definitely good dietitians out there. There are definitely good nutritionists out there.
Right.
But having that designation doesn't necessarily mean that you're giving good advice.
Yeah, don't even get me started on some of my interactions with some folks that claim to have, they have an RD or they have that nutrition background, but it doesn't mean that they were taught the right way. Just because, someone, let's say a doctor 30 years ago was taught something doesn't mean we practice medicine the same way we did 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Look into the science, look at the facts. You cannot deny the science. The science is there. Dr. Esselstyn's like, Laurie, to really have any type of, credence, and when it comes to, supporting this type of diet, you have to do research. I said, why do I have to do research when the research is already there?
Yeah.
My job is to go and spread this message to people, tell them practically how to implement it in their lives. And then what happens, it takes care of itself because you can't argue with the results. And so, I don't think I need to, it took I think Dr. Gerger said 6,000 or 7,000 research papers or studies to show that smoking actually was correlated with cancer and higher death rate. It's like, this is ludicrous. We're going to kill ourselves before we have 6,000 to 7,000 more articles in America changes. This is insanity. And so I refuse to continue down that path. It's like, I don't have to do the research. We can, obviously, at the center where I'm working now, we're going to be doing that. Yeah. But the message is still going to be the same. I know the truth just from what I saw. And so if you're a doctor who cares about your patients, then open your eyes and look at the science.
Yeah.
It's simple.
Well, part of the problem is like we live in an information age now. Mm-hmm. And so like the quote you're referring to is like it was 7,000 studies before the Surgeon General finally came out against it. But the College of Physicians or something still took a while to get on board to that. Right. And that was because they got money from the tobacco lobby. And right. So
think of all the people who died.
Exactly.
All those people who died unnecessarily.
During that time, there were studies coming out to say that this smoke was better than that smoke. Choose the smoke that was healthier, the healthier option. And you kind of have that today as well, right? Like I see sometimes where someone will come back and provide 2 or 3 studies that show a low correlation between, say, meat consumption and cancer or something like that. But you really need to be a scientist to be able to read that research paper and see any flaws that might be there. Like maybe they overcompensated for adjusting for, say, cholesterol level. Well, if you adjust for cholesterol level, then you're not really taking into account the amount of meat they're eating or something like that, right? So it gets hard because there can be science that muddies the water.
Well, and I think this is a really simple thing. I tell people, watch the money. So wherever the money flows, that's going to tell you your bias. So if this study is from an unbiased group of scientists who aren't being paid by someone who could benefit from the study's outcome going one way or the other, then you can feel fairly confident that's probably going to be, they don't care about the outcome. They just want the truth.
Yeah.
But you're right. Absolutely. If someone adjusts for cholesterol intake, well, yeah, then meat might not show that it's an issue for heart disease or whatever. And it's unfortunate that, we pick little pieces of a study and think that one study is going to change the facts. But the overwhelming evidence shows that a plant-based diet is the healthy way to eat. It's for longevity, disease prevention, and to live your life the way we're supposed to live. And it's amazing.
Well, and the practical day-to-day results prove that, right? Like you said, every patient that switched to the Nutritarian diet got better.
Over and over and over again. 5 years later, the same thing happens every day.
Yeah. No one got worse.
Nobody got worse. And it's really funny for me. I think I've told you this before, but it's, you know how they talk about when you have drugs or do alcohol, you get an elevation in dopamine and it feels good.
Yeah.
So every time I convince a patient to follow this lifestyle and they come back and they're praising the value of vegetables, it's like a hit of dopamine. So I call it my veggie crack. It's like there is such a high in having people actually heal. It's the most amazing experience in the world. And you don't have to be a physician to share this message. Yeah. You could be, sharing this message to your family, to your neighbors, to your children, to the school teachers, your school teachers. There's just so much that we all could do. It's going to take an army to change this culture. Yeah. And it's going to take another army to change, our government and USDA recommendations of what we should be eating and our food policy. And, I could talk for hours just on that, but it's an amazing thing to me that people would trust a blogger saying, oh, you need to eat an Atkins diet over the science of a doctor like Dr. Fuhrman or Dr. Bernard or Dr. Greger. It's ludicrous to me how you couldn't see this.
I think a part of the trouble is you've got doctors like Dr. Atkins, right?
Right.
I've got a doctor credential as well, and I'm saying that you need to minimize carbs, right? But again, Dr. Atkins was selling something.
Right.
Right. So.
Right. What is the end game? What is the end? Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's unfortunate.
So now you are at Dr. Fuhrman's Health Oasis in Florida. You're the clinical director there.
Yeah, I'm the medical director of Dr. Fuhrman's Health Oasis. It's a pretty cool story. So Jack Friedman and Donna Hearn were substance abuse counselors here for many, many years. And about 5 years ago, Jack developed type 2 diabetes. And they discovered Dr. Fuhrman, and you know the story. They lost weight. He got off his diabetes completely. And, this is like bread and butter now. Yeah. Reversing type 2 diabetes is like, if you do this, you will get better. You may not get off all your meds, but most people will. And what was really interesting was they had kind of fallen out of the substance abuse counseling, and Donna had this brainchild of, we should ask Dr. Fuhrman, who they hadn't met yet, about incorporating a Nutritarian diet and medical observation with clinical or the psychology component of mental health to really help people overcome food addiction, which is basically the majority of America. Because if you tell someone you need to eat this way to prolong your life, prevent chronic disease, reverse that type 2 diabetes you have, reverse that cardiac issue that you have, the coronary artery disease, a host of other issues, lower your cholesterol, make your joints feel better, help your stomach, whatever. And they tell you no because I have to have it because that's how I live. That's a food addiction. Yeah. You have now moved from food as fuel to food is what I have to have. It's like I have to have my next hit of, a cigarette or alcohol. And it's amazing to me what the incredible things that are going on here. And it's just, for me, it's just incredible how I got this job. But anyway, they approached Dr. Fuhrman, and before you know it, about a year ago, the plans were set in motion. And through a member, Martin, the chef from Aspen, I had knew Dr. Fuhrman, and I had met him very briefly, but Dr. Fuhrman and him are friends. Martin has written some recipes and stuff for him previously.
Okay.
And Martin was down here opening up a new restaurant with called Bolé with well, not opening it, but he was helping. He was a consulting chef on our project. And Dr. Fuhrman was down here talking to Jack and Donna, and they were talking about how they needed a medical director. And this was last May, and Martin goes, well, I got the perfect person for you. And that same night, while they're still driving in their car, I'm talking on the phone with Dr. Fuhrman, and he's like,
awesome.
Hey, yeah, you want to come down to Boca Raton and be my medical director for this clinic? And I was like, yeah, that would be great. I should probably, let me talk to my poor family. And my husband's like, Laurie, like, really, this is like your dream job. I was like, you have no idea. This is like, every day I go to work and it's like pinching myself. I'm like, I get paid to tell people to eat right. Everyone I work with eats this way. We're all on the same page. There's such a significant amount of things that I can do medically. There's like a limit. But when you bring in the clinical psychologists, and these guys are amazing what they do, they are magic. When you see the person come in the doors and what they leave in, their mind has changed, their whole person has changed, because we've gone not only to let's fix what you're intaking to your body. Yeah, I can tell you to eat this diet, and I can tell you how to do it. But if I don't change the mental hurdles, those obstacles are going to be placed in front of you again. These guys like just remove them, like they just pull them out. Like you got an abscess tooth, they just yank it out of the way and help you fix it, and they come out a whole nother person. And it's just, I am learning so much, and I'm so thankful to be able to be a part of it and just learn from these amazing people. And it's incredible. I tell you, it's an amazing experience, and God has been so good to me and allowed me to be here. So,
well, mood disorders and depression, it comes down to like everything you feel is because of chemistry in your brain. Mm-hmm. Right. And so if you're eating the right foods, you're allowing your body to concoct the right chemistry to feel appropriately. Mm-hmm. If you're eating bad foods, your body is less able to concoct the right chemicals for you to feel well. That's why there's associations with mood disorders, mm-hmm. and depression is higher amongst meat eaters than vegetarians and vegans, right?
Absolutely. There's some amazing science in depression. And I just actually last week gave a lecture on depression and nutrition. And so during the week, I give lectures twice a week, and then we do a food demo, and we teach them how to cook this way. And then we do a grocery store tour on Friday afternoons. I call them our field trips, and we have more fun just watching these guys become super confident in their shopping skills. And I'll ask them about something that's like, well, Doctor, I can't have that, Dr. Marbas, because this is why. And I'm like, you guys are so amazing. They're just doing so great. But absolutely, when you're eating these foods, the cool thing is when someone walks in the door the first day, and we provide them breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you have some people who go through some withdrawals, and they're pretty significant. They can last, upwards of 7 days in some people. And their taste buds change. So now they're tasting real food because they don't rely heavily on spicing. There is some herbs and some spices, but it's not like overly done, like in some dishes. So because we want them to really taste the food, taste the sweetness of a strawberry and taste the sourness of a lemon, and see those combinations of foods, and how, you can use cauliflower to make a sauce, and just some amazing mind-blowing things for them. And they're simple. You don't have to be a gourmet chef to eat this way. It's just the foods together are such a symphony of taste that they didn't really discover, because we've basically taken our food system and our foods, and we just, you layered salt and fat and sugar on it. And before you know it, that's all you taste. And that our brain's going, give me some more. Yeah, give me some more. So we remove that layer, and we allow them to eat right. And then at the same time, we're addressing someone's, for example, they lost a loved one and they've been overeating since then, or they had, a crisis as a child and they went to food as comfort because they didn't have control of their life at that young age. So there's those things now we're bringing into the fold. It's an amazing experience to see these people not only heal physically, but mentally and spiritually. And for me, that's the whole package. And this is like a magic place. If ever I could say, I've never been, I know I changed lives in Rifle saying eat this way, but I didn't have the opportunity other than the lifestyle medicine clinic. We did bring in behavioral health there, and that was very helpful, but not to this extent because that was still outpatient. I have never seen where it's such a perfect storm to actually heal. And to be a part of something so new and so incredible is mind-blowing to me. Absolutely mind-blowing.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, a lot of people fill that mental void, right, with food. It's you feel down, so then it's the cycle of addiction, right? Like you feel down, so you have something that's high in fat or high in sugar, and you get that dopamine rush, and that makes you feel good for a fleeting moment. And then you need more to reclaim that rush, and eventually you get a higher tolerance. So you need more and more and more to get that dopamine rush, and your body kind of rations out the dopamine for you. So it takes longer and more, and that's the cycle of addiction, and you end up, you can never get enough.
That's exactly right. Your body, it's just like with alcohol. So you drink and then your body's like, ooh, I get this, you get more dopamine. Well, then over time, your body is like, it's this hyper stimulation, like this hyper palatable food that we consume in America. What happens is the same thing that we do with alcohol or smoking or whatever. You get that dopamine, your body builds a tolerance. So now we've regulated our dopamine receptors on that receiving neuron or whatever. Yeah. And now it takes even more of the substance to create that change. And then we get this thing called toxic hunger. So we've eaten this horrible food and we think we're full, but in an hour and a half or 2 hours, people are shaky and they've got a headache, they're moody, they're irritable. They call it hangry, hungry, angry. Yep. And honestly, they still should be in the digestion phase of the meal. Yeah. And so what happens though, they're just finishing up the digestion and now their body's like, I need my next hit because I'm going through withdrawals because I really need that food. Whereas if you're eating a healthy plant-based diet, a whole foods plant-based diet, you would probably be okay for 4 to 6 hours. Yeah. So these people who are saying, I have to eat every 2 hours, right? Because I'm hypoglycemic, and you check their blood sugar is normal, or it's even a little high. It's like, you're not hypoglycemic. You're going through toxic withdrawal from this terrible foods. Yeah. And we just don't understand that that's what's going on. And that's what I love about Dr. Fuhrman's approach is this micro density, the micronutrients and the dense foods that we're eating. That's just amazing how we heal our body. It's a very logical thing. We had talked about this before the podcast that, your health equals your nutrition, your nutrients divided by calories. And you really want to have a really high nutrient dense food with a low calorie density food. So that where your score of your health goes up. It's hard to explain without like writing it on the chalkboard, but it's an amazing equation of food, and it makes complete and logical sense. And it's a cycle that people just keep putting. And now we're feeding our children like this. Oh, yes, that's a whole nother story. Yeah. Gosh, creating little food addicts. Luckily, I grew up in a home without any money. We grew up pretty significantly struggling financially, and so we never got to go out to eat the junk food. It was like a treat every once in a while, and so we ate what my mom cooked or we grew in our garden, and that was it. We ate a lot of beans, a lot of potatoes, some meat, but not much because couldn't afford it.
Yeah. Sadly, now the junk food is cheaper than
Right.
Right. Well, not necessarily. It depends on, like, we could talk about this in a second here. You're doing the $50
Oh,
a week.
yeah. Let me tell you.
But like people go to Walmart and they see ramen noodles on for 25 cents, and right, that's the cheapest thing they can eat. But if you go back to that health equation, you're getting calories but zero nutrition on the top. So it's an infinitely poor health quotient.
Right. You're exactly right. The health quotient is upside down when you eat those type of foods. Yeah, no, I did the $50 per week challenge because that is one thing that I kept. It's a recurring theme. And especially when I was in Colorado, not so much here. I mean, I'm in Boca Raton, Florida. It's like a very wealthy place. But there's still people here who live within a certain means. And I, living here while my family's still in Colorado, we're on a budget. And so I was like, this is going to be great. So I videoed for 3 weeks before my family came for the holidays, because then I had to feed 5 people. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure I would struggle with $50 a week on 5 people. I could probably stretch it, but it'd still be a little bit of a challenge. But
you'd just be eating rice and beans.
Yeah, pretty much. And they might protest a tad bit. But what was amazing was it was really easy. Even at Publix, which is kind of like a Kroger or City Market or Safeway or, one of the more common grocery stores here in the United States, I easily did this $50 per week. And I had a huge variety of food. And there's a store called Aldi's that I didn't have in Colorado. This store is amazing. Okay. I am an Aldi addict. So you walk in, it's like a little bit of a warehouse type setting, and they just kind of stack the food. They check out your groceries. They don't bag them for you. You have to rent the grocery cart and you get your quarter back because they want you to push it back to where the grocery carts are lined up, because they didn't want to pay someone to go grab them so they can actually give you the cost savings. So they pass the savings on to you. And their produce is amazing. Nuts, 10 ounce to a 12 ounce bag of pecans is like $5, like $4.99. Oh wow! And I'm sitting here mind blowing, and the spices are cheap. And I'm like, if Aldi ever need a spokesperson, I will be at front of that line. It is amazing, absolutely amazing. Now,
honestly, you speak true. Like, before, going grocery shopping was a chore for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you'd go and you'd pick up your meat and you'd basically go to the frozen section and you get Pop-Tarts or gross food. Now it's an adventure. You go in, you're like, I feel like I'm a child again. I'm just running through La La Land. I'm like, look at all this lovely color. I love the produce section.
That's so true.
It's just an adventure. Like, you enjoy buying your food. I no longer, like, I remember being in the kitchen previously and like being grossed out, like handling chicken. And you'd wash your hands before, and then you'd wash your hands after, and you'd have to wash off all the surfaces. And it was like, I felt like being in a biolab. And now it's just like, grab something out of the fridge, give it a good rinse, and away you go. There's no concern about salmonella. There's no concern about E. coli. Like, it's just natural.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's really interesting. We had a grocery tour yesterday with our patients, and we went through Whole Foods, and we were walking by. I wanted them to see the salad bar and make some decisions, because there's prepared soups and different things, and we're reading ingredients. Yeah. But as we walked by the kind of the warm food bar, there's meat, and then there's rice and potatoes, and they go, Dr. Marbas, look at the color difference. They're like, this is the food we've been eating. That they're the colors, the bell peppers and the blueberries and the spinach and the kale. And they go, look how blah that is over there. It's like meat and rice. Nothing wrong with rice, but we want brown rice. But, it's mashed potatoes and with oil and just fried stuff. And they're like, I don't even want to look at that because it makes me tired just to look at it. And it is. It's so fun. It's such a beautiful plate to eat. Even a veggie burger. It's like, wow.
Yeah, all that other stuff has that beige, bland color.
Yes, right? Yes.
Yeah, I was talking to my wife about that yesterday. It's like any food, any processed food that you've got, and you're looking at the ingredients and it has added color to it. Why did they need to add color to that? Right? Like, shouldn't it be appealing on its own if it's good food? Like, if you have to add color to something, chances are it's not what you're supposed to be eating.
Absolutely, 100%. Why do I need to add artificial dyes to my food?
To make it look appealing to you.
Exactly. Yeah. Then that should be a red flag right there.
Exactly. Well, there's a reason we see color, right? Like we see color because we're supposed to be in equatorial Africa, rummaging through the jungle, and look over there, there's oranges on that tree in this sea of green. Let's go and eat that orange because that's where I get my nutrition.
Exactly.
Right. So what's I guess, like, the people that come to the Health Oasis, obviously they're believers already most of the time, or like,
no, not necessarily. Yeah. We have people who have actually never even heard of Dr. Fuhrman because we're doing TV commercials. We do, a lot of, Facebook ads and different marketing. So yeah, we reach obviously people that are familiar with Dr. Fuhrman, and that's been a lot of our initial ones. But we have some people too that have just like, I know nothing about this. And they come, and when we tell them what they're going to be eating, they're like, really?
What did I sign up for?
Yeah, I was like, I said, but now I have you. You can't leave. And, it's really fun to take those people who not only think they understand a nutritarian or a plant-based approach to eating, but also those who don't know it, but those who think they know it, and really meld them together. And there's a lot of gaps in knowledge because they may skim through a book or they may try it for a few days and then they fall off because we haven't addressed the food addiction. So yeah, you really never know who's going to walk in the door. So It could be a lot of different ones.
And so what should someone expect when they're coming there? You said there's some education piece, there's some shopping piece, cooking piece.
Right. So there's I call it two tracks. So you have the medical component and then you have the clinical side. Clinical meaning the psychological services, the mental health, the benefits. So the medical, I do a phone consult with the people first to determine if they're actually going to be good candidates to come stay with us. Okay. And once they arrive, we do, your basic blood work. We do a physical examination. We talk about their medications. We talk about their diabetic or hypertensives that we're going to be treating you with intensive nutrition therapy. So we have to be very careful because those things will improve rapidly. Yeah. And not uncommon to stop blood pressure meds the first week, stopping your insulin the first week. And so those are pretty cool things to have people, they're excited to see that. So I do that. I also teach the classes. I teach about this way of eating. I explain the science, the food addiction in and of itself, how we reverse diabetes and how this works, and the describing of what lipotoxicity is and insulin resistance, and down to a cellular level so they fully understand it. And I teach them, why we don't eat certain types of foods and why we eat other types of foods, and why we want to add, ground flaxseed, for example, to our diets, and why we want to do the G-bombs, the greens, the beans, the onions, mushrooms, berries, and nuts and seeds. I mean, it just rolls off my tongue at this point. And so those things I teach along with food demo. I cook for patients, or I have some other people that are working with us now, some amazing staff. The one in particular, Brian Hetrick, who's amazing. He does food demos with me. I have an amazing nutritionist, Anna Hathaway, who's from Brazil, and she brings her knowledge, and we're quite a team with that. And then we also do what I call I was telling you, the Friday field trips, where we go to different places and we learn how to shop, and then I'll pull up menus off a restaurant and we'll go through and say, what are you going to order? What are you going to order when you go to this place? What are you going to do when you go out to eat with a friend that you haven't seen in 20 years? What are you going to do when you have a party at work? So those are things, because once they're prepared with the knowledge of the practicalities, they'll feel confident going home to do that. Yeah. Well, then we have what I consider the most important part is the clinical component, because these people, I'm telling you, they're like magicians. I don't know how they do it. I need to go sit in on some sessions, but they have individual and group therapies. And what they cover is, everything from managing stress to interpersonal relationships to women's issues to, men's issues to, grief and loss. I mean, there's so much that I can't even begin to tell you. So I feel like I'm a small component of this. I give them the practical stuff, the tools, but I can give them the keys, but then the psychologist, the clinical staff actually, they tell them how to put it in the engine and turn it on.
Yeah, they unlock the mental door.
Yeah, exactly. And they keep the car running. They tell you to keep the gas in the tank. And it's just an amazing place.
Oh, that's awesome. So you mentioned that you screen to see who isn't a good fit.
Right.
Why would someone not be a good fit to come?
I think honestly, it's individuals who are still, let's say they have an alcohol addiction or there's a chronic pain issue with narcotics or benzodiazepines, because to fix an addiction and then fix the entire person and make you healthy and well, those things have to be dealt with first. Okay. Because we would just be moving from the food addiction to another substance that hasn't been dealt with. And we're not in a place, at least right now, to deal with that as well. Okay. So we ask people to have stopped smoking, to have, stopped the alcohol, and work with their doctors to wean off chronic narcotic medications. And with that being said, those three things. And otherwise, everyone's welcome. So, I hate to be that way, but that's really what we need, because we want the person to succeed. Yeah. We don't want them to come through the program and not have the success that they should if they haven't dealt with those things first. And that's just not our role right now. And there may come a time that we can take that on, but as of right now, that's just not what we're doing.
Yeah, I can say that quitting smoking was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. It's that kind of addiction, you end up doing anything to satisfy it. Mm-hmm. And it's it will sabotage any other efforts that you're really having.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So that's what I meant by screening those who may not be a good point in their life right now. Gotcha. To come join us. Yep.
And so do you guys have an exercise regime that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, depending on the individuals, because we could have people come who are unable to physically, the other criteria is that people have to be able to ambulate, or walk, be ambulatory and walk, from their rooms to the van to get in to come. Because we don't have the staff to actually be, that point. We can't dress someone or something like that. Yeah. That'd be great if we get to that point, because there's a lot of people I think that would benefit from having those services. But anyway, so, when they come, we look at them, honestly, I just get people moving with walking. They have a gym available to them. Depending on where they stay, they can stay. There's some apartments on the Intracoastal, and there's also the Boca Beach Club, which is a resort setting. It's beautiful. It's amazing. They're both amazing places. So, but they're two different levels of accommodations depending on the financial constraints of the individual. And they both have gyms, wonderful gyms. I also have a lady that's starting. Her name's Lee Garsinski, who I work out with, who's amazing, going to be working with our folks in the gym, telling them, showing them the beginnings of exercise. We also have a pool available for someone, for example, if they're significantly overweight. The buoyancy of the water, just walking through the water and movement has been amazing for people. So we keep it very simple, no more than 20 minutes or so for those who haven't been exercising. Okay. Now, if we have someone who has already been exercising, which we've had, someone might be working out, 45 minutes a day. Well, we'll work with them to make accommodations, but we try to keep the groups together as best we can. We don't want people isolating themselves. And we have staff with them 24/7. They're being monitored. They're not going in and physically helping them, get out of bed or dress, but they have staff with them. We're called behavioral health techs with them 24/7. So people don't drive. We take, every opportunity to make this, I don't want to say they're put away, but in a sense, we're taking away any potential temptation to fall off the bridge. So we're
you're providing every opportunity for success.
We're hugging them. Yeah, exactly. We're hugging them tight because we really want them to succeed. And honestly, they've had a great time. We they do some field trips on the weekends as well, and there's like a little turtle park. They go to Gumbo Limbo or the beach or whatever. And, it's just so therapeutic even walking along the ocean. But we do provide exercise in a monitored setting.
Oh, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So you had mentioned that you had a cool story about some books you wrote while you were in med school.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. So when I started medical school, I had 3 children that were 5, 3, and 10 months old.
Oh,
and,
wow.
Yeah, that alone is, I honestly don't recall how I did it. I was very fortunate, though, that I have a very supportive husband, but he was driving 100 miles one way to work because he was still active duty in the Air Force. We've both been active duty military, and I went on later, but he was still active duty at that time. So we were living in Lubbock, Texas, and he'd drive to Cannon Air Force Base, which is 100 miles one direction, and then he'd come home.
Wow.
Another 100 miles. So it's 200 miles round trip. So if anybody complains about their commute, just don't ever mention it to my husband. God bless. He's such a good person, and he puts up with me. I'm just, again, thankful. And so anyway, so when I actually started a joint degree program. It's a dual degree program, MD, MBA. So I got my MBA in health organization management at the same time with 3 little kids. My grandmother lived with us. She helped out some. She had some health issues herself. My 3rd year of medical school, she had breast cancer and a stroke. And so we had a lot going on in that little house. But when I started medical school and all these classes and the flood of knowledge that they expect you to memorize and to assimilate and to remember and regurgitate on a test was
huge.
It was like a tsunami of information, and you knew it was coming, and what stressed you out even further. But then I'd go home and I have little kids and they want my attention, and I have a picture of my daughter when she was 5, and she looked like she had been crying laying on my lap, and I'm looking at the computer, and the boys are, one of them's 3 running around with, I don't even know what's in his hand, and the 1-year-old's holding 2 balloons, and I'm trying to steady. So that was literally that was such a great snapshot of my everyday life during that time. So I would look for anything that I could do to make my brain work better. So I drew. I've loved drawing since I was a little kid. I was a doodler well earlier, probably in part times at school. I probably shouldn't have been doodling, I was listening. Because I did well in school. But
it's a learning mechanism. I know
it is a visual thing.
Yeah. When I was at working for a public accounting firm, they would, if we were doing courses, they would bring in like Play-Doh and toys and stuff because they recognized that some people learn better while just fidgeting, essentially. Right? Some people doodle, some people play with things, but that you learn better when your mind is double tasked. Right.
I'm a fidgeter, I guess. But definitely a doodler. And I've always loved to draw. My mother is she had an amazing skill when she was younger as well. But what was interesting, I had a friend mention that her dad had actually done like cartoons to memorize stuff. He wasn't a physician, but it just kind of triggered something into me. So I started thinking, now how can I do this with pharmacology? So pharmacology, there's so many drugs and you had to know their mechanisms and their side effects and blah, blah, blah. And so what I would do, for example, there's a peptidoglycans think of it as a broad umbrella term for a certain class of drugs. Okay. And so peptidoglycans would be a Pepsi bottle. So Pepsi, peptidoglycans. Yeah. So whenever I would see that, then I could visualize in my mind the picture, the cartoon. So you had the Pepsi bottle, and for example, the vancomycin is a van. So vancomycin, because it's VAN, yep. So it was a little van in the cartoon running across the Pepsi bottle. And in the Pepsi bottle, I would color the vancomycin red because there's a flushing syndrome that comes with vancomycin. Oh, okay. And then it was running over some mean-looking little sugar cubes because there's part of that process of how it works is an amine sugars. It's AMINE. And, the disruption of the amine sugar. Anyway, but all of that's how I would do it. And then it went on from pharmacology to behavioral health to microbiology to anatomy phys biochemistry. And then my classmates started getting wind of what I was doing. And then I think there was like drawing parties. It was pretty funny. So, I would hand out my drawings. I had like assignments due for my classmates so they could learn what I was doing. So what was really cool. I would read it first and I would draw it out, and then I would read it again to make sure I got it correct.
Yeah.
And so I was like learning, and I could doodle and read while I was, doing with my family or whatever.
You made learning fun.
Yes. It was so much more easy, or more, assimilate into my head.
Yeah.
And so what happened was I had an instructor, Dr. Pelly, who is still there, by the way. My daughter's actually starting medical school this summer, and she's going to Texas Tech, and Dr. Pelly's still there, and it's just so cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
So what happened was he's like, I know an editor, and before I know it, we published 7 books, and we called them, 6 of them were called Visual Mnemonics, and then we did a clinical blueprints, which is I did in residency. And what we did there is you're in residency and training. There are opportunities to learn things. So basically you watch one, you learn how to do it, and then you teach it. And that's kind of how you make it through residency training, because you've got to be there to learn it. Well, sometimes you might miss an opportunity to learn a very important skill because you just never had it presented to you. And so what we did was like, I see a gap in knowledge here, so let's fill it. So what we did is we came up with a list of the most common procedures that either like an internist or a family medicine doctor or a pediatrician would need to learn, and we call them clinical blueprints. And the Texas Tech was amazing. They allowed us to use, their facilities, and Blackwell Publishing came in with a photographer.
Oh, that's awesome.
I had residents volunteering. I used my children. I used my grandmother's x-rays. And, we did all these really cool things, and that was a blast. And so that was really helpful. So, yeah, that was a long time ago.
So would you recommend these books only for healthcare professionals? Like, should an average Joe grab them and now I can do medical procedures?
Maybe not the clinical, the clinical procedures, it's going to be for someone who's in the healthcare field. Now, if you have someone who's in college, for example, who's studying to be a physical therapist or a nurse or pre-med, absolutely, those are very helpful. I don't even know if they're in print anymore. You can get them used. I saved some for my daughter. She has a whole collection. So when she starts medical school, who knows, maybe we'll revive it.
I think I saw them on Amazon this morning. So
did you see on Amazon? Yeah. Sweet. But yeah, so she's excited to be able to use a resource that her mom used. Granted, the pharmacology is significantly different than 20 years ago. Yeah. But it's going to be really fun for her to say, yeah, that was my crazy mother. But we started medical school and kindergarten the same day. She was happy as a lark running into school, and I was like bawling like a little baby. I was like, my baby's grown up, and I'm going to medical school. Oh my goodness! So it was a dream come true. It was a long-term dream, and since I was 10, I wanted to be a doc. So
that's incredible.
Yeah, that's how that happened.
That's a great story. So if someone's listening now, what one piece of advice would you have for a Path Mender? I just love the name of your podcast too. I think that's so amazing. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it is. It's mending your paths. Though there's so much, but I think it's just a matter of don't be afraid to start just because you don't know something. Something seems so overwhelming. Don't look at it that way. Just start adding those foods, your vegetables, your fruits, your whole grains, your beans, seeds, nuts, into the diet, and just start thinking about, well, how can I make what I already eat healthier? Yeah. And then as you move along, remove the dairy, remove the meat, remove that processed food. Do you need to go to Starbucks and have your Frappuccino, whatever, every day, and pay $10? You're going to be amazed that your bank account's going to be thankful too, because it's not going to cost as much. Yeah. That, I think, is this just starting. That's a lot of people. But then there's people like me who just have to just do, once they're convinced, they do it overnight. But I still say, come up with a plan of action. There's so many resources now. Like, for example, Dr. Fuhrman's books, the End of Heart Disease, the End of Diabetes, End of Dieting. Those are great resources because they really help you explain the science, and they give you a bit of a way to get started. There's some recipes and online, like I love the Happy Herbivore and Oh She Glows, and there's some great websites, but just have a bit of a plan in place because there's so much right now that you can reach out and find the information. Because instead, like me, I just went home on a lark and said, I'm just doing this. And then I was up to 1 a.m. Googling plant-based foods because I had no idea what I was doing. And there's no need to put yourself through the stress of that, because then I thought, well, now my big experiment's going to fail because I wasn't prepared to bring this to the family in a way that I should have. But, it happened for a reason. But I just say there's so much information. Give yourself a little grace, and you're going to fall off the wagon here and there. I did once, 3 months after going plant-based, and we were out of almond milk frozen yogurt, so I had the regular, and I was sick for 24 hours. I won't do that again. Oh, it was like the flu. And for me, that was like definitely won't be doing that again.
Yeah, I just hit myself with a hammer.
It's like sledgehammer. And jeez. And so honestly, I think, if that happens, see what your body does. You may not have a reaction, but a lot of people do. But at the same time, jump back on it. Just because you fall off doesn't mean you stay off. Yeah. And that it's a cycle that we go through every day. Every new day is a new opportunity to change the destiny of your life. You change the trajectory of your life when you change what you're eating. And it's so important to understand there's so much more to life than what's on our plate as far as in the enjoyment of the food. And the food is amazing once you start eating this way, but you just feel so good that other opportunities start presenting themselves because you're not dealing with the chronic illness and the fatigue, and your mental alertness is aware, and you're able to go, wow, maybe, I do have a goal of I want to run, a 5K. Well, now I actually feel good. My joint pain's gone away. So I'm going to do it. It's amazing the snowball effect that occurs. So just start.
I couldn't agree more. Add more fruits and vegetables, add more healthy plant foods, and eventually that'll push out the bad stuff that's on your plate that you're eating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I agree. Like, a fail to plan is a plan to fail. So figure out something that set yourself up for success, right?
Right. Exactly.
So, well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. It's been great.
Well, I appreciate you inviting me. It was very fun.
Yes, it was awesome for me as well.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's all the time we have for this week. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Mend It Past podcast at www.menditpast.com. Don't forget to check out the Mend It Past resource page at www.menditpast.com/resources. There, you'll find many resources that can help you on your journey back to better. See you all next time.
Visit menditpast.com and get back to better.